Coming up on The Cost of Living.
I have observed it with certain brands where they wanna break into a certain market, and it seems obvious that they're like, hey, we'll pay you this much if you mention Balenciaga.
You know, they may just want to rhyme Balenciaga with Star Wars Saga. But more often these days, when a brand gets a shout out in a song, someone is getting paid. Hi, I'm Paul Havershood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Name dropping a product into a song lyric for money? Please. Once upon a time, we would have called that selling out. But now, for a lot of musicians, it's like Jay-Z said, that's just business, man. Also today, remember tip-flation? Of course you do. How about tip-deflation? Because those auto prompts for 22, 25, 30%, they could be spurring a backlash. Up first, if you're looking for a sweetheart neck crop top for $4, chances are you're shopping at Shein. It's the fastest of fast fashion. But all those cheap clothes come with a price. The hashtag Shein haul has more than 14 billion views on TikTok. A lot of them sound something like,
oh my gosh, there's so much. My mom's the best. First is a swimsuit. It's literally so cute, I love it. OMG, these are so cute. There's these little pink flamingos on these silk pajamas. These are gonna be perfect for summer. I love them. This is the cutest thing ever.
That girl is deep into the world of Shein. It's the big dog of fast fashion. It's Zara, H&M, Forever 21, except turned up to 11. Tops for $2, dresses for 10. It sells more stuff for cheaper than anyone. But it's also not just a plucky clothing maker done good. Shein is now trying to list its stock publicly. But concerns about labor practices, human rights, and the environment means the US and the UK could block the IPO. Nicole Lippman is an editor at N+1, a literary magazine based in New York. She just wrote about the fast fashion phenomenon that is Shein. Hello.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So, Nicole, just how big is Shein?
Shein is sort of incomprehensibly large. It's one of the largest clothing retailers in America by sales. It's certainly one of the most popular companies for clothing on the internet. If you sort of go on any social media or talk to anybody under the age of 20 or so, people are really familiar with Shein, and it's kind of inescapable.
Well, then what's it like if you're shopping on the Shein site?
It's really crazy in there. The Shein website is kind of junkified in the way that the Amazon experience often feels junkified, that it's sort of unclear, like, if product photography actually matches the product listing. There's so much stuff for sale, especially clothing. So even just searching for like black long sleeve t-shirt will turn up hundreds, if not thousands of results. So it's very overwhelming. It's very chaotic. It's very gamified. There's a lot of like flashing lights and bright colors. It certainly gives you a headache spending too much time on the website.
And the prices. I mean, you can get shirts for like $2. You can get wedding dresses for $40 or $50. How does Shein manage to sell clothes for those kinds of prices?
So they're certainly cutting costs somewhere, most notably in labor costs. They are just not paying the people who make these clothes a fair wage. And that's where the money savings for customers really come from, are these like really exploitative labor practices. But also Shein employs this fast fashion manufacturing strategy called small order quick response, in which the company places these small quantity orders at factories, and the factories then produce the clothing that goes on the Shein website. Clothes that sell well are automatically reordered from the factories, and clothes that don't sell those orders are automatically canceled, and so the company isn't holding on to a lot of excess inventory. There's also no storefronts, so those kind of traditional clothing company costs are also cut.
Well, how many factories are we talking about here?
By some estimates, Shein has more than 6,000 factories, but it's really difficult to get firm numbers or data about the company. There's not a lot of oversight into like what the factories are producing, and that keeps costs down too.
On the marketing side, well, what kind of strategies has Shein used? I mean, are it conventional strategies, or is it doing something different to get people to buy its clothes?
So Shein uses sort of conventional social media strategies, or conventional at this time, of like sending products to influencers, paying those people to advertise their products on the internet. But the company was really early to that game. They started doing that back in 2012 when sort of influencer marketing and content strategy was really different. And so they've been at the forefront of this kind of marketing for more than a decade, and that's really definitely contributed to their popularity.
And then you also use the word gamified, and I think that, some people think about bells and whistles and things like that, but are there other gamified kind of strategies that Shein is using to move the product?
Yes, Shein's website operates on a point system, so for every purchase that somebody makes, you gain Shein points, and every 100 points turn back into $1 that you can then spend at Shein. So it really encourages customers to keep buying. You can also leave reviews on products, and that will get you more points. You can post photos with your reviews. That'll get you even more points. There are mini games on the Shein website that you can play for points. It's all about this points system.
So when I hear people, periodically say things like, hammer that like button, it's because they're actually getting points if people like it?
Yes.
All right.
Or at least they think they are.
Now, Shein also wants to list its stock in the U.S., and the U.S. might block its IPO. The same thing could happen in the U.K. What is the pushback about here?
So in the U.S., the pushback against Shein's IPO has been a rare bipartisan attack. And so both parties here have sort of been coming at Shein for different reasons. The Democrats are interested in Shein's anti-competitive practices and their purported use of Uyghur slave labor to manufacture the cotton that's, in theory, used in their clothing. Whereas Republicans are attacking the company for its ties to China and therefore its alleged ties to the Communist Party. So you have the two parties agreeing on one thing, which is they don't want Shein here. But the London Stock Exchange has been much friendlier to the company. And in fact, because the stock exchange is a little weaker there, there's been bipartisan encouragement to get Shein to launch its IPO in the UK.
You wrote in your story that fast fashion retailers like Zara might sell 30,000 new products on their website in a given year, which feels like a lot of products. You look at Shein, it can put up more than like 1.2 million different items. What is the worry about fast fashion becoming just this much faster?
I think it's sort of tied to this system of consumption and capitalism that we really have in the Western world, where if you have all of this product available to you, the idea is that you'll buy more and more of it, and you don't need to buy things that will last a long time or be well made or even like be sort of in trend in the long run. There's just always so much product, and so you can just buy and discard. And it has, astoundingly horrible effects on the environment and labor practices. And ultimately, that's what's causing all of these problems, is just how much clothing is being purchased.
Yeah, well, these issues you're talking about, things like labor practices and the environment, they have come up before when we talk about fast fashion. I mean, they come up all the time when we talk fast fashion. You see these images of these giant mountains of clothes just sitting there out there in places of the world. And yet, people buy stuff from Shein, and a lot of it has become this massive retail phenomenon in a really short amount of time. How do we square those two things?
I think, honestly, a lot of people aren't thinking about it, and I don't blame them. This is a lot of information to hold in your head, and it's political, and most people don't understand that there are options to buy or make clothing that are beyond fast fashion. But ultimately, all of this is related to what we think clothing should cost. And I talk to people about Shein and about other stores, and they'll say things to me like, well, I don't want to buy something at Shein, but I don't want to spend like more than $7 on a t-shirt. And the question really is why? Why can't you spend more money on something if it means that the person who made it received a fair wage, or the environmental costs of making that garment were mitigated by the company? If we continue to think of clothing as this discardable object, we're going to continue to discard it.
Shein, and you mentioned that they're looking to grow and maybe not just sell clothes, but Shein has been compared to Amazon. You talk about the business model. Could the Shein model work beyond clothing?
Yes, and it already has. If you go on the Shein website, and in the process of writing this piece, spending a lot of time on the website, I saw the company change from being basically all clothing to only having clothing as like one part of their brand. The company is now competing with Temu, which is an Amazon-like online shopping company that's not mostly clothing. And to compete with these companies, Shein is selling like small electronics and notebooks and backpacks. And again, in the sort of search engine way, you can type anything you want into the Shein search bar. And if it's physically small enough, it's probably going to show up there.
So if you haven't heard of Shein yet, you will?
I think so.
Well, Nicole Littman, thank you so much for all that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nicole Littman is an editor at the New York-based literary magazine N+1. On your Radio and Buy podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. What's your personal view on tipping? 20% across the board? More? Less? How about tip-flation and those auto prompts for 25 or 30%? Not everyone loves those. And our producer Danielle Nerman says they could be pushing tipping to a tipping point.
We have beauty influencers, travel influencers, parenting influencers, and now a no-tipping influencer.
Day 2 of leaving $0 tips. Day 6 of leaving $0 tips.
Nobody knows who he is. He goes by I Don't Tip on TikTok.
Day 7 of leaving $0 tips in Los Angeles.
This American has gone viral for being cheap. He won't even leave gratuities at places with table service and linen napkins. Now, Alessandro Montelli wouldn't go that far, but he doesn't tip on takeout or anywhere he has to stand in line to order.
Like, I should not have to walk into a coffee shop, buy a bottle of water, and then tip 18% over it. That is crazy to me.
Alessandro lives in Toronto and just graduated from university. Recently, he posted on his socials about why we should normalize clicking no tip on point-of-sale machines.
I don't think the tipping is really warranted unless, like, you literally sung me a song dedicated to me that you wrote in the back of the kitchen.
Canadians are cutting back on tipping. That's according to a new survey from Lightspeed, a Montreal-based point-of-sale software company. Nearly 80% of those surveyed say they don't want to be asked to tip by a digital payment screen.
So this is not sitting well with consumers.
Bruce McAdams is a professor in the School of Business and Economics at the University of Guelph. He's been studying tipping for more than a decade.
There is actually research that has come out recently that has shown that when counter service operators ask for a tip before you actually received the service and tasted the meal, there's less likely to return. There's less level of satisfaction for consumers.
Also, tip creep is real. We're being asked for a little something extra at the liquor store or the garage where we get our oil changed. Bruce says Canadians are fed up with being asked to tip everywhere they go.
I've had people tell me, I went to the bookstore and like, come on, I'm getting asked to tip at the bookstore. It's tiring.
And customers haven't been shy about letting their feelings out. Venting on Reddit and in the news, Bruce says some places have responded by reducing what they ask for on point-of-sale machines. Instead of a 20 or 30% tip, it's more like 10 or 15%. But it's not just tip fatigue or tip creep. In that same Lightspeed survey, the majority of respondents say inflation is eating into their ability to tip.
You know, if a restaurant meal used to cost $80, it's now costing $100. I may tip a little bit lower than I did before because I just don't have enough money to go around.
Yeah, that latte that cost you $3.50 a few years ago, now it's probably closer to $5. Bruce says leaving a smaller tip, or no tip, is one way consumers are taking a stand, because it's a lot easier to fight back against an anonymous point-of-sale machine than to stiff someone who has been waiting on you all night.
You know, it's almost like, okay, I'm going to get my revenge by not tipping my quarter or whatever it is on my coffee anymore. That's going to make me feel like the power's back with me and show that I'm tired of tipping. And I don't feel bad because I shouldn't be expected in a coffee. It was always optional. It wasn't expected. It wasn't a social norm like a restaurant.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Danielle Nerman.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Habershood. Are you listening to much new music these days? Like really listening to the lyrics? Here's a little taste of what's on the Billboard Hot 100.
My baby born a Birkin. She's been telling me all night long. So, move it up, down, left, right, oh, switch it up like Nintendo. Taking out, yeah, like a sore thumb. With a forehead that it grew horns from. Still a white shirt, pulling up in a Chrysler to the cipher with the flex perks and a Bud Light shirt. Lyrical technician and electrician.
Eminem, Jenny DeRosio, dig it.
Yeah, pulling up in a Chrysler.
In a Bud Light shirt.
Yeah, I mean, now what do these all have in common? They're mentioning brands. Birkin bag, Chrysler, Nintendo Switch, Sabrina Carpenter even sneaks another one in there. I know I'm Mountain Dew it for you, eh?
Oh yeah, that's seamless.
I mean, once you start to listen for it, brands and songs, you'll spot it a lot, especially in rap, hip hop, and R&B. You know, you got mentions of Cristal and a Lincoln Continental. And that's actually a big shift from what Rolly Pemberton came up on. He's an Edmonton rapper, better known as Cadence Weapon.
The sellout era, I mean, that's what I grew up in. It was don't be a sellout. And there was this idea of you got to keep it real. It was all about authenticity in the 90s, 2000s.
Yeah, the 90s was about authenticity. You didn't have Kurt Cobain shilling for Burger King.
Right. I mean, he remembers a time when compromising your art for money was sort of the kiss of death. But in the last couple of decades, there's been this big change in the world of hip-hop and R&B. There are far more lyrics and themes about conspicuous consumption. And brand mentions have bled into even more styles of music.
You see it a lot in pop music, too. I think, yeah, it can be subtle, but sometimes, someone being rhyming something with Coca-Cola.
Paul, when folks rhyme with Coke, it's not a joke. It's about money.
Because to rhyme like that, they're getting paid?
It's product placement. We're used to seeing it in movies and TV. Think about when Anne Hathaway does a Starbucks run in The Devil Wears Prada. But song lyrics are a part of that too. Brands will pay artists to name drop their products. Rolly says the fact that this happens is an open secret in the industry.
When I first started, no one would talk to me about that kind of thing. But I have observed it with certain brands where they want to break into a certain market, and it seems obvious that they're like, hey, we'll pay you this much if you mention Balenciaga.
And it doesn't even matter how hard it is to rhyme with Balenciaga.
I mean, you don't have to rhyme it. I like those Balenciagas, the one that look like socks. I mean, Cardi B says it, right? You just have to drop it in.
Okay, so that's Cardi B, but Caden's weapon, he said things didn't used to be this way.
No, but the seeds were planted a long time ago. I mean, people point to that big deal between Adidas and Run DMC. My Adidas was a huge hit in the 80s, and this group genuinely loved the brand. Picture this, Run DMC were playing Madison Square Garden. They asked thousands of their fans to take off their Adidas and wave them in the air. Adidas got wind of it, and it led to $1 million deal for Run DMC.
Okay, but Run DMC didn't get paid to put Adidas into its song. They did it, and then the deal came after.
That's true, but it was the beginning of this shift in attitude toward brand deals. That deal proved what these partnerships could do. And then enter MTV and the rise of music videos. Here were these little movies that were a whole new opportunity for product placement. Like, have you seen the video for Telephone by Lady Gaga? She's literally making Wonder Bread sandwiches with Miracle Whip. And at one point, she's using Diet Coke cans as a way to curl her hair in prison.
Yeah, it's absurd, and it feels like she's also making a very sort of conscious commentary on product placements in things like music videos, and she's still getting paid to do it.
Exactly. I mean, I talked to someone who puts together these kinds of deals. Doug Schabelman owns Burns Entertainment. He connects corporate brands with influencers, celebs, and musicians like Meghan Trainor. It's kind of a bop, right? It's cute.
It's not bad.
Doug's company recently put together a campaign between Meghan Trainor and the brand Fresh Pet.
So Meghan Trainor made a full-on commercial for pet food. That is a long way from Run DMC just kind of like throwing Adidas into a line.
How far we've come. Yeah, there's a whole ecosystem for brokering deals between artists and brands. More artists are pretty comfortable going corporate. And corporations, obviously they like this development. A lot of them are looking for ways to reach a younger demographic. They want to be seen as cool.
You know, if you're thinking that BTS is the new hip, best new music artist and your brand is associated with them and you don't have to pay, or you have to pay a small amount, heck yeah, you're going to think, wow, that's awesome. I'm injected into, that cultural moment right now.
Okay, sure, but how are we supposed to know when we hear these name drops which ones were paid for and which ones aren't?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. Some of it's organic and some of it isn't. That's why this kind of all works. Sometimes it's paid for. Sometimes it's just musicians literally writing about the world they live in.
We're going to the pool and we're drinking Hennessy and we're drinking Coca-Cola and we're doing, and a lot of times it's, a lot of the music has to do with lyrics, rhyming. A lot of the music has to do with what they're personally doing.
I mean, Lexus does rhyme with Texas. It does.
No, it does. Off-white Lexus, because BK is from Texas. For sure it does. But what about the fans who are there, just for the music, man? Do we know how all this is playing with them?
I mean, it depends on your personal ethics. If you're a punk fan, you probably care. Young fans are used to being advertised to almost everywhere they look.
Audiences who have grown up with this and have grown up with influencers have kind of been like, yeah, you're selling to me. I know it. It happens.
Trisha Farwell teaches advertising at Middle Tennessee State University. She says Gen Zs grew up being sold stuff online. Where they might draw the line is if it feels too forced.
One of the things that product placement relies on is transferring your love of that artist to our brand. So as soon as you realize that the brand has been mentioned and that it's not, it draws attention to itself, that's when that magic disappears. And then it becomes, oh, I'm being sold something.
Okay, so it's a fine line for us and how we feel about this and how obvious the reference is, if we're being hit over the head with it or not. But what about the artist? What about the idea of selling out?
I mean, everybody's got to make a buck, Paul. Because of streaming, artists don't earn what they used to from people just listening to their songs or buying their records or CDs. Rapper Rolly Pemberton says now artists are looking to get as many sources of revenue as possible.
Instead of people being like, oh, don't be a sellout, now people are clamoring and climbing over each other. Artists are climbing over each other. They'll do anything to have a brand association. They want the brand connection. In a way, it used to be like, I don't know if I should put my song in this movie. Like, people will think I'm a sellout. Whereas now it's like, how many movies can I get my song in?
So it's kind of like Fitty said, get rich or die trying.
I mean, he said it best. The music industry has changed, and fans have become more forgiving of people trying to make a buck. I mean, hustle culture is a thing. Making music is a business.
We have been conditioned to think of ourselves not as artists or just distinctly creative people, but to start thinking of ourselves as brands. I think that was a big shift. I think of the Jay-Z lyric, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, man.
Jay-Z is a business. He was like the first billionaire rapper. But you know, when you think about someone getting paid to name drop a brand into a lyric, it just all feels so corporate. Like, I step back and I'm like, what would the Sex Pistols say about all this?
Was that before or after Johnny Rotten did a commercial for Country Life Butter?
Ooh, touche. I guess, you know, anarchy doesn't really pay the bills.
Put that in a song.
Thanks, Jenny.
No problem. It was fun.
That's all for this week. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. And if you're looking for one more way to listen, you can now stream live radio on the CBC News app. On top of that, you can get all the news on the CBC News app. So, whew, look at that. CBC News app. Right on. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Ellis Cho, Jenny DeRosio, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Caroline Ferris. I'm Paul Habersrud. Thanks for listening.